Hey folks, well, it's time I guess to deal with more Terral03. Let's carry on, shall we? As you can see, my camera still isn't quite fixed, it's still grainy. Pain in the arse. But we're going to deal with some more Terral's claims in his videos. Now first up, what we're going to deal with is, as you know, he claims there's going to be an event on March 22nd, generally about 2 minutes to 5 in the morning, for GMT time, or UTC, whichever one you want to go by. And he seems to, well, he thinks it's going to happen in the Pacific region, which is no surprise because that's where a lot of volcanoes and a ring of fire happens to be. There's a lot of tectonic movement there. There's a lot of earthquakes and volcanic action, as you know. And he thinks it's going to be about New Zealand. He thinks New Zealand's where it's going to happen. You know, a place that's been getting a lot of tectonic activity right now. So he thinks an earthquake's going to happen in a place where there's been a lot of tectonic activity. Yeah, big claim there. So, he also seems to think that swarms will be attacking. Yeah, swarms of earthquakes.
The most likely, the highest candidate for action in this cycle is going to be in the Pacific. Could just about for sure say it's going to be the Pacific. However, I believe that it's going to be down near New Zealand. That area has been moving a lot, but the thing to realize is that with Chile and with Japan, that we had swarms associated. So in the days leading up to March 22nd, you're going to see swarms around the affected area. If those swarms are up in the northeast, then you expect a giant event. If they're down in the southwest, then expect that's around New Zealand, then expect that where it's going to be. But I'm looking for a 9.2.
He didn't even say swarms of earthquakes, so I've got to ask you, what swarms? Locusts, perhaps? Are swarms of locusts suddenly going to attack people? In the Pacific, there's a lot of earthquakes every day. And yes, there will be some tremors before a big earthquake at times, and sometimes there's not. It doesn't prove anything about your claims, because there are roughly about 20 earthquakes a day around the world, and most of them happen where, would you believe it or not, tectonic activity happens to be taking place. Some you get in places where there's no tectonic activity, like sometimes in Scotland we'll get a 4 on the seismic scale, because we do have a fault line in Scotland. It's where Loch Ness, Loch Och and Loch Lochy are, the great fault line there. Split Scotland in half, to be honest. But like I say, I could make a prediction. There will be an earthquake in the Pacific somewhere in a large area. There'll be an earthquake in the Pacific. Will it mean it's true? Yes, because it will happen. Will it mean I'm prophetic? No, because I can make an educated guess.
Towards something. And what I believe is that this event that's coming up at this time is the focus of their attention. March 22nd is an Illuminati Day, 322.
So not only do we have to deal with Nibiru and the gravity trough with a space pig coming to eat and the second star in the solar system, now we're on to Illuminati. I don't know how he concludes that March 22nd is Illuminati Day. 322, it's apparently Illuminati, it's like numerology. Are we slipping into numerology now? Like, 21 is a devil's number according to Tapley, and so is 23. Or is it? No, sorry, 23 is a devil's number, and 11 is a gay number because it's two ones which represent man, or some bullshit like that. Numerology. Really? Numerology. Now, next bit is him citing off people that are apparently all saying that March 22nd is the day of the big event. And he cites one called the Barca Roller, or Barca Roller. This guy has videos for the entire year giving out warnings of events. You know what? That's called casting your net wide. Because you're sure to get an event if you keep on saying every day there's going to be an event. You're going to strike it lucky at some point with your events. YouTube videos do not make evidence. They do not use YouTube for research, people. It's fucking retarded.
Even this fellow right here, he sees 322 as a big problem, and he doesn't even see the heavy mass object in the equation. He's predicting an 8 magnitude.
You know, with him not predicting a heavy mass object, that kind of makes him more scientific than you. Even though he is full of shit himself, I've watched the video. The fact that he doesn't see a heavy mass object coming into the equation means that he can at least recognise that tectonic plate movement will cause an earthquake. Of course, he thinks it's from planetary alignment, but it's still one step closer to reality than you, Sonny Jim.
But it's not the end of the world or anything like that. It's not even that we're going to be able to see the heavy mass object. The heavy mass object is super cold, and if it is a black dwarf, then remember, it's theoretical. They do not have instrumentation on this planet to be able to see the thing.
We don't have instrumentation to see it, of course, because it's not yet real. There is no such thing as a black dwarf yet. Of course, even if we did, we would be able to see it because we would have the instrumentation to measure the effect of the gravity. And of course, the sun's light would reflect off it. Our sun reflecting light, you know, the moon isn't a light bulb, it doesn't create its own light, it's just well lit because the sun's light reflects off the moon. That's why there's a dark side of the moon, because there's always just the moon is locked in a geocentric position. It doesn't rotate, so you're only seeing one side of the moon ever, and it's the only side that faces the sun, because the other side faces out from the sun. Ah dear. Your next claim is quite ludicrous. Let's see, what is it again? Oh yes! Scientists out there say that there are planets that are orbiting nothing. No. No astrophysicist ever said that. What they will say is that there are dead stars out there that planets orbit. And they're rapidly cooling down to become, well, almost invisible to our current technology. The difference being, of course, that we have seen these dead stars. And we have found them. There's one that was recently found, actually. It was pure carbon. So, over to you, Sonny Jim, with your claims.
For some reason, scientists think there's planets out there that are orbiting nothing, when in actuality, the stars that they can't see. There's stars that are under ignition, like our sun, and there's stars out there that are dark stars. Remember?
That's just hilarious. Of course, then he goes on about brown stars. That should be fun as well. I'll let him go with his brown star bit, then I'll come in with the explanation about what brown stars actually are.
Remember too that the first dwarf star, the first brown dwarf, was officially discovered in 1995 because they are very, very difficult to see.
Right, yeah. Brown dwarf stars, yeah. Well, see, the problem is that to understand what a brown dwarf is, you do need to understand the difference between a star and a planet. Here we go. As a star forms, it's a cloud of contracting gas. The temperature in the centre becomes so large that the hydrogen begins to fuse into helium. Remembering that hydrogen is the simplest atom out there. And that releases an enormous amount of energy, which causes the star to begin shining under its own power. A planet forms from small particles of dust left over from the formation of a star, and these particles collide and stick together. There's never enough temperature to cause the particles to fuse and release energy. And in other words, a planet is not hot enough or heavy enough to produce its own light. Okay? Now, brown dwarfs are objects which have a size between that of the a giant planet like Jupiter, which isn't hot or heavy enough to produce its own light. There's not enough temperature in it to do fusion, to be honest. And that of a small star. So that's what a brown dwarf is. Roughly, a lot of scientists dub brown dwarfs as failed stars. It doesn't have the ability to sustain fusion of hydrogen like a regular star would. And it's only started dating in 95. Astronomers have been able to detect a few nearby brown dwarfs. All of the brown dwarfs discovered so far are parts of a binary system. A binary system is one in which two stars orbit around one another, and kind of like ours, kind of orbit around the sun. But yeah, there you go. That's what a brown dwarf is. A brown dwarf does not belong to a, so far what we've discovered, does not belong to a single star system to have planets rotating around it. It's generally a binary because there's not enough mass for it to ignite. It's not a star, and it's likely to rotate around a star itself, being a part of binary, of course. Set. There you go. Quick science lesson for you. Not that he's ever going to know it, of course. Okay, now he goes into a little bit more craziness. He starts to link earthquakes with constellations now. Remember, constellations are patterns that we, as primitive beings, drew in the sky from what we can see, because our brains are designed to recognise patterns. So he goes on to say that the Chilean earthquakes and Fukushima earthquake were created by passing through the Leo constellation, and he thinks that Saturn's great storms only come when Saturn passes through Leo constellations. The fail is strong in this one.
Remember Jupiter's core? Liquefying.
Just a quick point about Jupiter. The core, we don't know if it's solid. I know it's a gas giant, but generally the outside of the outer of the planet, the surface of the planet, is gas. Then it's got a liquid metal of hydrogen and helium ring, and then the core, which we don't know if it's rocky or not. We've no idea. So I'd like to know how he knows the core is liquefying, as we can't tell yet whether it's rock or gas or liquid metal.
Saturn got its recent superstorm passing in front of the Leo constellation. It happened 30 years ago.
Actually, the last superstorm was 1990.
29.5 years is one Saturnic year. The last time Saturn had a big storm, it passed in front of the Leo constellation. The Earth, Chile, passed between the Sun and the Leo constellation. Fukushima last year passed between the Sun. The Earth passed between the Sun and the Leo constellation, but just a little bit farther towards Virgo. 5.5 days every 188. Remember, so the pattern of seismicity, the magnetics of our planet, the activity of the Sun, the overactive Sun, all pointing to the fact that it looks like we have a heavy mass object coming in here. Now,
you heard it, folks. The Sun's apparently overactive. How he figures that one out, I don't know. Going through constellations of Leo, I mean, that's obviously something that we never do except when a heavy mass object comes in. Earthquakes, they don't happen every day. They only happen when a heavy mass object comes in. You've heard it all here, folks. The next video is going to be dealing with his website. I wasn't really in the mood for this, but fuck it. Hope you enjoyed it. See you there, guys. Bye.
Get out of the seismic zones. Get out of the seismic zones. Get out of the seismic zones. Get out of the seismic zones.